the clothes, and we love the no-pressure shopping. Drop by Twill in the Edina Galleria for the best shopping experience and best clothes you'll find in the Twin Cities.
So how did you think Everson Griffin looked? I'm not sure I really got a good sense of that.
I think he looked like he was more sure of himself, willing to, just kind of get after the quarterback in obvious passing downs. And, the Vikings did, it's such a cliche that they always talk about. We have to stop the run to be able to rush the passer. But that was really what happened, I thought, on Sunday, where, the Lions ended up averaging 2.8 yards per carry. Kerryon Johnson had 37 yards rushing. So they did that early, and they, things were a little bit slower in the first quarter as the Lions got down in the red zone. But what I noticed is so many of the sacks early came when the Lions were in the red zone. There were 2 times during the game where they had back-to-back sacks. And then going back this morning, Monday morning, watching all 10 of the sacks, only one of them came on a blitz, which to me was kind of amazing. And that was Mackenzie Alexander's, where they actually dropped a defensive lineman in coverage. And I think it was Alexander and I believe it was Eric Kendricks came on a blitz. And I was surprised that, with about 10 seconds left on the play clock, Alexander shows that he's going to blitz. And then he kind of backs off and then he comes on the blitz again. To me, he showed his hand too early and still ended up being a free runner. It looked like the Lions offensive line and their whole protection packages were confused about what was going on. I think they probably expected more blitzes from the Vikings and didn't get it. And when they did, the time that Alexander came, it sure looked like they were confused. There were several other times where it looked like running backs were a little bit confused on, am I supposed to stay in and help protect? Am I supposed to chip and get out into protection? And Stafford, by middle of the third quarter, looked completely flummoxed by what was going on. To me, it was really an entire defensive line operation. It wasn't just Danielle Hunter. He was obviously the standout of it. Tom Johnson had a couple sacks. Everson Griffin, I think, ended up with 1.5, maybe 2. All of them really got into the act. Stephen Weatherly had one. The only guy on a regular rotation that didn't have one was Linval Joseph. And so, they just really did a nice job of running stunts occasionally, but just beating guys one-on-one. Taylor Decker looked overmatched when it came to whether it was Everson Griffin or Danielle Hunter. They beat him badly several times, and that's not a good look for a team that drafted Taylor Decker to basically get rid of Riley Reif. So another personnel move you have to question in Detroit.
Yeah. And overall, this is kind of what the Vikings hoped and envisioned, which is a very deep, talented defensive line dominating an opponent and not really necessarily needing you to send extra people to dominate. I mean, and that's a staple of Vikings history. The Purple People Eaters, John Randall's teams, the Jared Allen teams, they've always around here wanted to get home with 4.
Yeah. And, this was what Zimmer was winning with in the past couple of years. And this year early, because of some things that he was changing on defense, I think mainly was the reason for it. They needed Kirk Cousins to step up and be a 350 yard passing guy. But if their defense can play like this, and they still have some work to do in the running game, despite Dalvin Cook breaking that long one. In this game, looking at Stafford, there were a few times where he missed open check down receivers that kind of were wide open, but a lot of times there was just really good coverage. I mean, there weren't a lot of opportunities for him to take shots downfield. Several times he kind of double pumped, clutched the ball because he was initially going to throw the ball. And when you look at some of that in the film, there were double and triple coverages that he initially wanted to go to. And by the time he tried to get to his second or third reads, Vikings, the way that they rushed him, they really collapsed the pocket and didn't give him many opportunities to escape. So it was really one of the best defensive game plans, if not the best defensive game plan of the year for the Vikings.
Absolutely. And the division's fascinating now, isn't it? I mean, the Bears look formidable. We still don't know exactly how good Trubisky is, but I think Nagy's a good offensive coach, and he's found different ways for them to succeed. Khalil Mack is a monster. The Packers lose a tough one in New England. They're 3-4-1, I think. But yep. I still don't, I never count Aaron Rodgers out. I think the Lions have written themselves off. I mean, the vision really is there for the Vikings if they play well down the stretch and if they beat the Bears twice.
Yeah, and to me, that's going to be the key. They've got 2 games left against the Bears, and they get one coming out of the bye, which a lot of times you think is a good thing. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It all depends on how the team responds. But I think the good thing for the Vikings is that, when they come out of the bye, they realize, okay, we've got a shot at the division. We are one of the leaders in the division along with the Bears. And they get the Bears immediately after coming out of the bye. So there's no reason that they shouldn't be focused, shouldn't be fresher than they have been, which I think is really going to be a key. Is that, it is a cliche to talk about, does the bye come at a good time or not? In my mind, it really does come at a good time this year. To me, sometimes you look at it and you go, okay, they're on a winning streak, or they just won, and now you don't want to kind of put a halt to that momentum that you had built up. I don't know. I think the Vikings have so many guys that are so banged up, whether they were active or not active, that having these 2 weeks off, and it sounds like Zimmer is going to give them a decent amount of time off this week to try to recover. I think that's going to be very good for them. Riley Reif getting healthier, that should help. Hopefully they get back Anthony Barr. Xavier Rhodes played through that foot injury in and out of the game. To me, it comes at a good time, and then it's all out in front of them when they come back for the final 7 games of the regular season.
Agree completely. I do think the bye can help, but the only time the bye doesn't help is if you're already out of it and it doesn't matter, or if you're playing so well that you don't want to interrupt yourself. This has been a struggle to get to 5-3-1, and now they get a break. Now they get healthy, and they can enter a very difficult 4-game stretch fresh. One of these weeks we are going to be out at Mississippi Pub doing a live show. We'll also do a show hopefully next week sometime at Twill in the Dining Gallery if you want to drop by and check out Scott Dayton's shop and visit with us. But we do at least one live show a month at Mississippi Pub in Inver Grove Heights. Google it, GPS it. It's not hard to find, but it's kind of hidden, so you need to use your GPS to find it. Go to MississippiPub.com. The cool thing is, Tim, I had some people reach out to me on Twitter and say that they were Viking fans from other towns. They came into town, they landed at the airport, and they popped over to Mississippi Pub because it's so convenient to the airport as well as the Vikings practice facility. They have daily happy hours, appetizer and drink specials. They still have the patio, which might be open if it's a nice day. Breakfast 9 to 11:45 on Saturdays and Sundays. We love the burgers. They have fish fry Fridays. $6 burgers Monday through Friday, 11 to 2. We highly recommend, and they sponsor our program in conjunction with Beaver Island Brewing from St. Cloud. So head down to Mississippi Pub, have an affordable burger and a Beaver Island Brew pub, and we appreciate it. Also want to thank Bite Squad, bitesquad.com, delivering food in the Twin Cities, in a very large area. And you can use the promo code TALKNORTH, one word TALKNORTH, to get your first delivery free if you're new to Bite Squad. We appreciate all of our sponsors helping us with our program. Interesting that Zimmer brought up the fact that there are a bunch of teams that are using the Vikings blitzes now, and so they've had to change so they don't look the same as every other team. Yeah,
and I think when I hear that, okay, first of all, there's a potential that can kind of come off as arrogant and sort of the, hey, we invented this defense and now everybody's copying us. But to a degree, I think there's some truth to it that, more and more teams you will see stack the line of scrimmage with 6-7 defenders and show a heavy blitz coming, and sometimes bring 1 or 2 of those guys, other times back everybody off, go back into coverage. And I do think it makes the job of the quarterback that much tougher because you just can't get a great read on how they're defending things. But what I think he means about how they have changed their defense is They aren't showing the double A gap blitz as much as they were early, or have over the past several years. And Zimmer did the same thing in Cincinnati. But also, I think the way that they're bringing their pressures is you do see guys off the edge a little bit more. We saw Mackenzie Alexander coming on a nickel blitz, and he's done that a little bit in the past, season and a half with Alexander. You'll see Harrison Smith coming off the edge. You might see, a late corner blitz or things like that are trying to still get pressure on the quarterback and try to get the ball out of his hands, making a read quicker than he wants to. But, to me, it's always been interesting that when Zimmer came to the Vikings, you heard about this defense and how much, they blitz with it. The reality is that the Vikings aren't a huge, heavy blitz team. They blitz about an average amount of time, I would say, but it's not as much as the perception is because people have become so used to seeing linebackers like Anthony Barr and Eric Hendricks up in those A gaps and showing blitz, but they're not always coming. And so from game to game, they've really changed up how much they're going to blitz. Sometimes it has to do with a rookie quarterback. In the case of the Lions, as I said, 9 out of their 10 sacks came on a 4-man rush. And so you see that they are able to generate pressure with just 4 defensive linemen because they've invested so heavily at that position, and they're willing to spend on guys like Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter. And they've got a solid backup in Stephen Weatherly, who can also bring the pressure when he gets in. So it's there has been an adjustment period, I think, for Zimmer, and not only defenses sort of copying what the Vikings are doing, but I think offenses were starting to figure out, okay, here's where the weakness in this defense might be. And now that Zimmer is changing things up, I think it's confusing offenses a little bit more. Eventually, I'm sure he would love to get back to doing what he knows with sending Barr and Kendricks on occasion. But for now, I think he's made that adjustment after it hurt them early in the season, not making the adjustment.
And let's not forget that the Tampa 2 defense that we now think of as just archaic and silly to use was a huge innovation in the 90s, in part brought in to help control Randy Moss. Every defense kind of gets exposed eventually. You cannot just line up and run the same defense all the time anymore. You can run up in the wing T.
Yeah, and I have to also give Zimmer some credit for, during the offseason, he spent a lot of time putting in different wrinkles here, different wrinkles there. And, he admitted that perhaps he was overcoaching early in the season. I think he has backed off some of those wrinkles because they weren't always either being communicated in on a play-to-play basis very well, or they had younger guys that weren't exactly certain what their responsibility was on this play. If this receiver does this, do I hand him off? Do I stay with him? And so I think that's been good that they've sort of simplified things a bit, if you will. But also, I do like the fact that, he has Mackenzie Alexander in there a bunch as their nickel cornerback, but there are plenty of times where he's putting Jaron Kearse in there as sort of that big nickel package. And I think especially when other teams get inside the red zone, it helps to have the length that Jaron Kearse has. Jaron Kearse is like 6'4", 6'5", versus Mackenzie Alexander, who's about 5'10". That's a big difference if you're talking about trying to fit it in a tight area in the end zone, in the red zone, and you add to it the wingspan that Jaron Kearse has, and I think it helps. So I got to give Zimmer some credit for adapting as things have progressed this season.
No question. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook and his speed and how it looked on Sunday. We do want to thank Fixology Repair, fixologyrepair.com, third floor of the Mall of America by Nordstrom's, downtown in the Skyway, just south of Wells Fargo Center. John Hedges always comes out to the Russo Suhan show at Delano's Pizza, and it's always good to have him. His business has done very well, and, fast, friendly service. I'm about to take my iPad in there that I've been promising to take in for a month. As soon as I get back from a quick trip this weekend, I'm going to be bringing it in there to have them fix that. They also have watches, accessories, all kinds of doodads, cool stuff. Fixologyrepair.com.